Mirrors were a pretty great invention, unless you're me maybe. It's also a fairly recent one. Mirrors in their current form weren't invented until around 1835. Until we learned how to make glass flat, most people could only see their reflection by a pool of still water or polished metal. But with the invention of mirrors for the first time, people were able to see their own images pretty clearly. Now, interestingly, that led to some superstitions and fear. Some thought that when a person looked at a mirror right over their shoulder, the devil would be looking at them. Now, it's partly because they thought that only God could see a person rightly, so that this must be something demonic. Now, superstitions are silly, but with the invention of mirrors, there did come a real temptation to get distorted images of ourselves. On some levels, the more clearly we could see our images, our appearance, the less clearly we ended up seeing ourselves as we truly are. We begin to get less focused on ourselves as persons and more obsessed with how we look, with the dangerous world of comparisons and the shallow parts of who we are, and less focused on what it means to truly be a good and loving human person. Now, healthy spirituality has been defined as, above all, seeing rightly. That's also true about seeing ourselves. Now, it's not so easy, I think. It's there, but it's kind of hard to see past the first thing we see when we look in the mirror. Now, on this first Sunday of Lent each year, the gospel writers tell us the story of Jesus being tempted by Satan in the desert. Mark, who we hear this year, gives us the least amount of detail. But in each of the Gospels, it is clear to me that the devil is trying to tempt Jesus to a false image of who he truly is. It's, who he is, what his purpose is, how he is meant to be in the world. It's exactly how the devil tempts us to a false image of who we are, how we are meant to be in this world, why we are. Now, a big tactic to do this for the devil is shame. The devil is big into shame. Shame about our ordinariness, our lack of fame, our likes, our popularity, our lack of financial success, shame about past mistakes, sins, some kind of abuse or trauma we suffered, shame about any emotional struggles, and shame about what we see in our appearance when we look in the mirror. Now, there's a ton to unpack in each of those, but since I don't think I hardly ever talk about our body image, let's talk about that a bit today. Now, of course, we are so much more than our bodies, but it's important to understand our bodies are profoundly important. For the ancient Celts, their bodies were actually a part of their scriptures. Their bodies reminded them that God took on a human body in which to become real in this world, and that God continues to use our bodies in which to be embodied on earth now. Now, sadly though, a lot of our shame and distorted self-judgment comes from what we see when we look at our bodies. I mean, how many of us carry shame about, I'm not asking for a show of hands, about our weight, our regret about our age, fears about our health, disappointments about how we look. And all of these things, including injuries, illness, genetics, and because we don't measure up to the images of the models we see in advertisements, most people would tell you there's a lot they don't like about their bodies. Quick aside about the models we see in advertisements and in movies. It's impossible to look like them. First of all, there's a certain amount of genetic advantage, perhaps, to begin. Several hours a day with a personal trainer. And a friend of mine who used to work photo shoots said every single picture they publish has been photoshopped. It's almost like it's news when you see a celebrity without makeup. So it's impossible ideals. Back to us. And so we compare and don't like. Now I do think, and maybe this is my style in particular, but it can be helpful to keep a sense of humor about it all. My favorite title of a dieting book is, "My goal was to lose 10 pounds this year, only 15 to go." President Abraham Lincoln, when someone accused him of being two-faced, said, "If I really had two faces, do you think I'd be showing you this one?" And my personal favorite is an intentional misquote. It's a kind of a redo of the talking mirror from Snow White. Maybe you can relate. It goes like this: "Mirror, mirror, near the toilet, I wake up hopeful and then you spoil it." Now maybe it's true especially when we're younger, but we tend to think we need to look a certain way and able to be loved. A friend of mine who struggled with weight said he used to just try to have less weight so that he would believe he was lovable. He said it was only as he was able to love himself overweight, if he was able to love himself enough to make healthier choices, right? Hear this sentence if you hear nothing else. If you sometimes think you don't measure up, the truth is, God loves you and the body you have been given as you are. As an aside, in the new book I wrote, I put an appendix of a little guided meditation where we bring our bodies to God and let God talk to us about them. The antidote to all these distorted self-images is to do what Jesus did. He saw himself in his Father's eyes, and as he spent time there, he saw that in his Father's eyes, as the scriptures say, he was beloved of God as he was. And that was what freed him enough to go spend his life for others. That's our invitation as well, because there, in our Father's eyes, we can see how precious we are as we are. Ash Wednesday, just a few years ago, a whole bunch of people came to receive ashes. Great turnout, thank you. One of the things I kind of like about it is one of the few times we intentionally make ourselves look ugly. It's kind of a statement perhaps to ourselves and to the world that we are more than our bodies, as much as they matter. When I think of two daughters of a friend of mine, lovely young adult women who decided for Lent one year to not wear makeup. It drove Mom nuts. But their point was they wanted to remind themselves that they knew that they were more than how they looked. And it is my prayer that all that we do this Lent, sacrifices we make, our extra care of those in need, and our time in prayer, seeing who we are in God, will truly help us see ourselves and each other more like God sees us. Yep. Mirrors, good invention. But like every good thing, they come with a certain level of danger. So the question is, when you next look in the mirror, what will you see?